Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. You can find me on Facebook at Galen Trombley, on Instagram at Galen Trombley, and on YouTube at Galen Trombley. Spelling GaelanTrombley. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Galen Trombley Show. Welcome, everybody, to episode 163 of the Galen Trombley Show. If this is a little bit different, it's our first time doing a webinar. My guest today is actually the first person to do the podcast, not at the actual desk. And Dan, just because we roll pretty much live, I'm just showing you the normal setup. This is normally where you would be, but we're here, so that's
have your little boom mics going on there and everything. What do you have? Yeti microphones? What are you using?
We got Shure mics, and then we got mine is a Steinheiser headset. We got the Zoom H6. It's a pretty good setup, but you are not in the area, so this is the first time we're doing this, which should be fun. And we've been trying to set this up, so I'm glad we did put it together. And we're using. I'll let you plug the software because
I don't need to plug it. I don't need to plug it.
But this is part of your company, right?
Yeah. This is WebEx, and so I'll give you an audio copy. I'll give you a complete video copy and a transcription of everything we say
in French. So that's good. So my guest today, episode 163, is Mr. Dan Stewart. Dan, I had a very, I guess, impactful career here in Plattsburgh, New York. Again, I will let you go through some of the details, but you were a council person at one point. You were a mayor at one point. You were in the Air Force up here at one point. So kind of, like I said, you were very, your North Country accent was very good when you came on. So you had plenty of years to practice it. So
why, yes, by the G's and Crow there.
Well, G's and Crow, I like it. So Dan, so anybody that does not know you, give us kind of a little rundown who you are.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks for the invite to do this with you. So I haven't had really a Plattsburgh experience for a while, so this is good to be able to do this. I listened to the one you did with Mark Barry, and I really liked it.
Oh, nice. Mark's. Well, you must have known Mark quite well.
Oh, yeah. And there are so many people. We were recently, John and I, my husband, we were up in Plattsburgh recently. We had to go to a wedding up in West Shazy. One of his cousins was being married, so it was. We actually drove up from Florida and took our time getting up there and back, and it was really good to visit again. But for people who don't know me, my origins come from the state of Rhode Island. So I grew up as a kid in Rhode Island on the mean streets of Pawtucket. And I'm a guy that had a single mom for my childhood. And then she eventually remarried to a cop, which I was not very happy about. And I had a stepfather who was a police officer and a bit of a authoritarian. So I revolted and, rebelled or whatever it is. And I was... I have a little storied history of my childhood, and I'm also a recovering drug addict and alcoholic, which a lot of people in Plattsburgh know.
Okay.
And when I was about 8 years old, is the first time I had a drink. About 11 years old was my first joint. So I started out early, and I was a bit of a mess before I even joined the Air Force. But I left Rhode Island in 1980, and when I was 17, my mother signed the papers for me to go into the military. And right after my birthday, I hopped on a plane, went down to San Antonio, Texas, I was in the Air Force, and I had 8 years in the Air Force. And the last 4 years were at Plattsburgh Air Force Base. And that's how I arrived in Plattsburgh, like so many people in that region that are still there, right? Plattsburgh has this, for the Air Force, it had this grip on people. And they would come to Plattsburgh and end up retiring there and not going back home to where they came from. And a lot of that happens at Air Force bases around the country, around the world. But Plattsburgh just seemed to have this draw for people. So there's a lot of former Plattsburgh Air Force Base people still living there. And the amazing thing is that I left the Air Force in 1988, and in 1993 as a city councilman, we started the whole process of reusing the air base. Clyde Rabideau was the mayor at that time. It was about saving the base.
Mm-hmm.
And then the government doing a quick 1-2 on us and losing the base, and then how do we use the base? But when I left the military, I settled in Plattsburgh. I was living in downtown Plattsburgh. Actually, I was hopping all over the place. I really had nowhere to live. I had left the military and had no job, no nothing. And but I had been sober for 14 months when I left the military because I got in a little bit of trouble in my last year in the military. So they told me I had to stay sober, and they sent me to a rehab. And when I left the Air Force, I was off maybe 2 months or so, and I started drinking again. And when I did, I lost everything, and I had nowhere to stay. And it was one of the strangest times in my life that was what happened. And for a few nights, I slept under the Bridge Street Bridge
Wow.
in downtown Plattsburgh, and then some friends were like, "Okay, you can stay on my sofa," and then I stay on that. So I sofa surfed for probably a good year and a half around Plattsburgh with friends, just people who felt kind of sorry for me. And but in late 1988, I got sober again, and I've been clean and sober since. So it's a little over 32 years now.
Wow.
Going on 33.
So, well, okay. So let's
You
go
didn't know
back
any of
to.
that, did you? Yeah, I'm
I
watching your
No.
face.
I mean, I get the boring stuff. I get that tells you that you're like the years and dates that you did. I know how old you are. I mean, it's the very important stuff here. So, but
Yep.
so, so Dan, if you went into the military, went into Air Force, um, you got transferred up here. You said in the '80s to
1984.
Plattsburgh.
Yeah.
So what was that like coming to Plattsburgh? Had you heard of Plattsburgh? Had
No.
probably from where you grew up was about what 5-6 hours away.
Yeah, yeah. I had never heard of Plattsburgh, right? And actually, I was trying to get stationed in Iceland when I was stationed in South Dakota, and I was putting for places that I would want to go. But there's an old saying in the Strategic Air Command of the Air Force, which is called SAC, Strategic Air Command, and that was once in SAC, always in SAC. So basically, getting out of Strategic Air Command was going to be difficult. And I was stationed at a missile base and bomber base in South Dakota, and I had put in for all of these exotic areas and Iceland. And I ended up getting this assignment to Plattsburgh Air Force Base, and I was like, "Where is that?" You know, and I looked at it and I said, well, it's not too far from home and it's not too close to home, which is a good thing. One thing I didn't want to do is ever really go back home. I never want, to visit, yes, but not to stay. And I also saw that Montreal wasn't very far from Plattsburgh either. So I thought, oh, okay, there's going to be a metropolitan city. That's cool. And that's all I knew. That was it.
So now I'm following your chart here of like where you so the so Plattsburgh Air Force Base now what was your first, I guess, when you came to Plattsburgh, like, again, I don't want to date either of us, but what was the '80s like in Plattsburgh when you first showed up? And what was the base what was the base like? I was born in the
Wow.
'80s, I have no memory of that time.
Yeah. All right. Great question. So, airheads, people like me, lived on the base, and
Was
locals.
this is this the Oval at the time?
Oh, no, no, no! This is over on the new base.
Okay, so you were like on New York
Yeah,
Road, off of New York Road.
officers lived on the Oval.
Okay,
Enlisted folks like me, we lived over on the cheap side. We're on the other side of the tracks.
you slummed it. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah. So we're slumming it over on the new base. And when I first got there, it was April of 1984, I think. And
Okay.
and I was like, well, it's like anything, Galen. You go somewhere new, the natural human responses are there. Are they going to like me? Right? What's it going to be like?
And what were you at the time? Were you like mid 20s?
Oh yeah, I was 22.
Okay, early 20s.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I was a young guy. In fact, I was just looking at some pictures the other day of me back in the military. I was a young, skinny guy, and it was like really interesting looking at that. But yeah, and I came here, and it was very strange because it's a new beginning. You're trying to figure out the people you're working with. There's this immediate thing about what's it going to be like here. And at that time, the mall was It was the what was then considered the South Champlain Mall at that
Yep.
time, and
Yep.
before the new one was built. So we had the old mall, and downtown was an absolute mess. I mean, it was a mess. I remember, like, I was still well. Let's see, I was heavily drinking then, so there were places like Mothers and
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Monopole.
Lila's and some other places on City Hall Place, and uh, it was interesting. But I spent most of my time on the base. I didn't venture all too often downtown. I didn't want to, like really deal with the locals. And the locals, for the most part, other than us being an economic engine, a lot of the young locals didn't want us downtown either.
What? How many people were on the base? Do you remember? It
Oh,
just involved in that whole community. It wasn't about 8,000.
yeah, yeah, it was a high number. It was a huge, huge number of people. The nice thing about the base, though, you have to understand, is that we had our own places to shop at, right, and to get groceries and booze and
So,
other stuff.
well, Dan, where was all that on the base back then?
Most of it was on the new base. It was all on the new base, and the BX was there, the store for clothing, anything that you really basically needed for the basics. But then you go off base to do other things like, there was even a movie theater on bases, gymnasiums, everything was on base.
What now with the gymnasium? Is that what we would deem the rec center now in the Oval?
One of them, yeah, yeah. Later on, they
Okay.
built another one over on the new base, but yeah, the one on the oval is one that was used.
Okay. Was it the wellness center? Or what we were the what was the wellness center? West Side Ballroom down New York Road. I don't. This might be kind of
You
new.
know what? That it
Or
might
could
be
have
named
changed.
that. I don't know. It was like,
Okay.
yeah, because I got out in
It's on the.
'88.
Yeah, it's on the base. So it's like when I look at like I said, old times with Plattsburgh, I like kind of looking at the history of it. But when you
Yeah,
talk about like the movie theater, I'm like, I don't know a movie theater down there. So I'm sure it was
yeah,
probably one of the buildings, or whatever, that's been
yeah.
turned into warehousing or
Yeah,
something.
there was an
So
HSBC bank on base and other, dry cleaning, all this other stuff. So it was like its own self-contained city within a city.
now, have you been back to the base
Oh yeah,
since you left?
every single time I visit Plattsburgh, I drive across that base.
Okay,
I,
so
I have tremendous memories from that base. I mean, just the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's like going across Plattsburgh Air Force Base is a time warp for me. It's kind of like when I go home to Rhode Island. When I do visit, if I see friends of mine, it's like they're still stuck in the 80s. It's like it's almost like time stood still when I see my friends back home.
oh really? So I actually went to a building this morning. It was a commercial space down near the base, and it was funny because it used to be an old roller rink.
Right.
I don't know if you're familiar
Oh
with
yeah.
this place, but
Yeah.
so I remember as a kid going there. So
City
it was so
councilman
funny
used to
because
own that or used
actually,
to run it.
who did?
Mike, the city councilman, Mike, he ran that thing.
Oh, Mike
Back,
Kelly.
yeah, no, no, not Mike Kelly. Oh, I like Mike was his thing. I can't believe I just blanked on his last name. But yeah, he was the city councilman for Ward 2 or 1. Ward.
Okay, so I actually was thinking about this today. I'm like, who ran that? So it was the Lake City Skate, and I remember going there as a kid. We had birthday parties and stuff, and the
Yeah.
skating rink is still there. So like, of course, I walk in, and there's some stuff that hasn't changed, and there's a lot that has changed. But it's like a nostalgia. Like, I can't believe this was as vibrant as it was 20 years ago, and now,
Right.
now it's a big warehouse that they're looking to sell. But same thing, like kind of blast from the past. You like went and typically I'm not that I don't mind looking at the past. I'm just so busy
Right.
day to day that when you look at something,
Yeah.
you're like, man, this is like, wow, it just brings you right back.
It's like going by
Um,
Skyway Plaza, right? And
yeah.
and and the ever controversial roundabout that people in Plattsburgh still can't use properly because every time I go there,
hmm
someone stops when they're not supposed to stop. It's like
Or they just blow right through and run through the yield. I'm like,
you
you're in the
you,
rule of
you
thumb.
have
If you're
no
in the circle, you get precedence,
you have no
right?
clue the heat I took for that roundabout.
Were you the one that put that in?
Yeah. Well,
I
not
love
me.
the,
The state put it in, but yeah,
but I
we
mean,
put
you're
it
the
in.
decision making.
Yeah.
So you ever been to, have you ever been to Ireland? They might have this in a lot of European cities, but
Yes.
Ireland had it on, instead of going to, there was like no stoplights. Everything was a roundabout. I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
You just keep driving.
Yeah. If you know how to use them.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Actually,
we did some silly
e-
things like reverse angle parking too. We tried that, and I got tore up for that one as well.
the worst roundabout though is if you go up to Champlain, they put two of them on the
Yeah.
exit. and the tracks or the tractor trailers are going through, but anybody coming up from Route 11, cutting across, they fly right through. I've almost been sideswiped twice going through there.
Really?
And I'm in the roundabout. I'm turning off to go to
Yeah.
the exit, and they're
Yeah.
you can tell they're not stopping. So slam on the
Yeah.
brakes, let them whip through. So, what got you into politics? Was this?
That's interesting. So I got sober in late '88, and um, the first and foremost, I just needed to be able to stay sober, right? When I went out, I mean, I was doing a lot of coke and other stuff too, so I was a total mess when I got clean and sober in '88. And when I when I started going back to meetings, I was going to my 12-step groups. Don't say the names of them. That's not allowed. So I'm going to 12-step groups and doing my meetings. And I actually started pumping gas. My first job was pumping gas for Ed Champagne at the Sunoco station on the corner of Route 3 and anyway, where it's up
Turnpike.
there.
22B and Route 3.
No. In right in the city there. It's by the Walgreens and across from Burger King. It was Burger King.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So there was a Sunoco gas station there.
Yep.
And Ed Champagne had all these racing cars. He'd race it all the time, and I'd be like pumping gas, running the station at night, and that's how I got my start back. And then I was doing work for some other folks. So there were some guys in recovery that were construction guys in Plattsburgh and other businessmen. Right, there are business people that were staying sober, and they kind of took a little pity on me. And they were like, "So what are you doing for work?" "No, nothing." "No, you want a job?" "Yeah, I got a job doing some wire lathing." I did the wire lathing on the side of a building. You know that Betty Little Park they just opened up,
Yeah. Yep.
right? I opened that up years ago for outdoor movies, right? And every time I go there and I look at that building that is up against
The
it,
West Ocon building.
no, the other one, the side of that whole building, right, from top to
Mm-hmm.
bottom, had wire lathed and then put the stucco concrete on it, right? I actually helped to do that, and that was one of my many jobs. I was like, give me money, I'll do the job, is basically what it was.
So you're talking about the one that I guess closer to trying to think back, like
Stand on
why I always
Margaret,
call it.
stand on Margaret, and look down at the city parking lot down below,
Yeah. Yep.
building
On
on
the
the
left.
left. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say it was there was a bagel shop there, and then next to
Yep.
the sushi Yamasushi now, which
Yeah.
was Mr. Wu back in the day. But yes,
Mr. Wood.
okay,
Yeah.
Mr. Wu. Yeah, so he's
Yeah,
great, and
and Freddie Choi was the one I believe that owned the building that we did the wire lathing on, and Freddie was a
okay,
great
yeah,
guy too. And
because Freddie ran it before Mr. Wu, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yes. Okay. 'Cause we used to go there. I mean, I like Yama, but that was another nostalgia was going there, and luckily Yama. Have you ever been to Yama Sushi here?
no, no,
So they took over the space, and it's very good. But they kept some of the same stuff from Mr. Wu. But again, I have memories as a child going there with my
yeah,
parents, my grandparents. So there's always
sure,
good memories going there. And every once in a while, I'll run
yeah,
into him, and he's guy's memory is impeccable. Never
that's
forgets my
cool.
name. So you got in. Okay, so you were doing odd jobs.
Yeah. Then I started
That
driving
led to
tractor
politics,
trailer. Then I started driving tractor trailer. Right, so this
and
is
you were out
important.
of the military at this point.
Oh yeah. I got out in
Okay,
'88, right, February of
80. Okay,
'88,
so yep.
and then I had a summer of fun, and then I got sober. A summer that wasn't so much fun, but I got sober. And then, do the odd jobs. And then I found like, I'm going to go to the labor department. So I went over, and I forget the guy's name. I talked to him over at the labor department over on, I think it was on Miller Street. And I'm talking with him. He goes, yeah, well, can you drive tractor trailers? I said, yeah, I actually have a Class A license. Yes. And he goes, okay, so here's a number. Call this guy. And it was a guy that lived up in Shazy or West Shazy, and I started driving for him, right? And
Okay, was it Harvey?
uh, I did work for Harvey, but
Okay,
before Harvey, it was this other guy, then
okay,
Harvey, and then I unionized, right? So I went to work for Georgia Pacific, and I got a job with them, and it was a union job, and I was working with those guys. Great group of workers there, and again going all over the place. And this is over the course of like 3 years, from like '89 to '90. Well, 4 years, '89 to '93, and then when GP, I left GP and I went to St. Johnsbury Trucking. Now, not everybody remembers St. Johnsbury, but we had about 4,000 workers in the Northeast U.S. and Southern Ontario and Quebec. And in 1993, around, I think, March of 93, well, first of all, how to get into politics, I have to say that first.
No, keep going. This is great.
All right. So in 93, they went out of business, 1 hour notice. St. Johnsbury went out of business.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yep.
I'm sitting in the break room and I'm reading the Press Republican. And there's this thing there about they're going to add a new map for districts for city council, for aldermen. They'll call it aldermen then. And they were changing the maps and there was going to be an open seat, right? And that's where my political start came. But before that, let me go back to why I'm political. All right. At about 12 years old, now I was a very sports-oriented kid, although I was, doing bad things. I was still sports-oriented. I remember my mother yelling at me, "Daniel, get outside, grab a ball and a glove, and get away from that TV." Why was I watching TV? The Watergate hearings. Right? I was watching the entire Watergate hearings from end to end as much as I could. I was just so overwhelmed and enthralled by.
Were you like 12 years old at the time?
Yeah, 12 years old.
Yeah.
And I was just hooked on what was happening, right? There was a break-in, the president was doing something wrong. Times don't change, do they? And and here I am at 12 years old, totally into it. And when I was driving tractor trailer, right, I'd be going from here down to Sylacauga, Alabama, and then back up to New Jersey and over to St. Albans, Vermont, then back over to Chazy, drop off a truck. And what do you do in a truck all night long? You listen to the radio, and AM radio was a thing back then, Larry King and other shows. But there was such constant political talk. Gee, times don't change much, do they? And all this talk. And I'd be listening to it, and I started to form opinions, right? I started to have my opinions. And then when this incident occurred of the company going down and me having no work and nothing to do, I decided, I called a few of my friends in recovery and said, "Hey, I need to talk." And one of them said, "Did you relapse?" I'm like, "No, I just need to talk." And we had conversations and I asked him, "Will you help me if I run for city council?" And we're all sitting around. And then one guy asked me, he said, "All right, man," he said, "I got a problem with this." And I said, "What's that?" He goes, "Well, okay. You're an unemployed truck driver. You're a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. And you're gay. We live in Plattsburgh, New York. This is not San Francisco. This is not Greenwich Village. What in the world makes you think that your qualifications would ever get you elected?" And he had a point. He had a point. But I was like, I'm going to try it because I had already got a little politically active with AIDS stuff. So when I left the military and started making friends in Plattsburgh, some of the people there started to get sick. Right. This is the AIDS crisis when it hit, hit me through the 80s, and people were sick. And people in the North Country were dying and being shunned and everything else. And, and I was gay and I was scared to death. I think all of us was scared. Anybody was scared that you were going to catch it. And I was, something's got to be done. And I was watching on TV one time, there was this group called ACT UP, AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. And they had done a massive protest in New York City. And I called down to Albany to someone that knew that group, and the next thing you know, I have a shipment coming in the mail of life-size outfit condoms, and I get a few friends, and they're like, "Okay, we have to go hand out condoms in the bars in downtown Plattsburgh and do a protest." And they're like, "Seriously?" I said, "Yeah, seriously, we need to do it, right?" So I let the police chief know that we were going to do an ACT UP demonstration and hand out condoms. And we had fluorescent colored bodysuit condoms, bright green, bright pink, and all this other stuff.
So you were wearing a condom basically.
Oh yeah. We
and then you were handing out condoms.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because we
I'm
felt
painting
that.
the picture here.
Yeah, we felt that it was important for the college students to understand that condoms are important, and so we were going in and out of Monopole and all the other bars and everything, handing out condoms, and in our condom suits, and and people were just like, what? And here's the best part. If I remember this correctly, the same night, Al Sharpton was coming to Plattsburgh to speak at Plattsburgh State. Now, imagine this. Yeah, and I mean, no offense to anybody in the North Country, but there was concern. There was concern, right? Dear God, Al Sharpton's coming to town. What does this mean? And remember the times. We weren't, North Country wasn't, not all people were like, anyway.
It was a little more conservative. Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And anyway, so the cops had to cover Al Sharpton and the condom people in one night. and it is hilarious, and then we go ahead, you get a question.
No, so how many condom guys were there walking around?
I think there 4 or 5.
And you all different color condoms?
Yeah.
That's great. Well, do you remember what color you were?
The green. I was a bright neon green.
Love it. There. I love it even more. Green's your favorite color, so you're winning.
And I had a reservoir tip. Yeah. They were included. So it was a true outfit. So you're really shocked by this conversation, aren't you?
I actually am. I didn't think it was going to a condom costume.
Yeah.
Dan, this is the first condom costume talk we've ever had, so this is great.
Mark Barry didn't have one? I thought Mark Barry would.
He didn't. I was waiting for Mark to come up with something like that, but no, he just talked about his book. Yeah, he kept it very low key.
Well, Mark's always been a little conservative, but I liked him. Still like him. So we did that, and then I was involved in some, there were protests every week at Planned Parenthood. So we started to counter protest them, right? Because I was pro-choice, and like, we're going to counter protest them, and we did that. And so all of a sudden, I'm getting interviewed by Channel 5 and the Press Republican, right? I started thinking to myself, wow, this is interesting. Like, I could have a platform. I could talk about stuff. So not only did I decide when I had no job that I was going to run for city council, but it was also already known in the community as being the condom guy, the AIDS active guy, the pro-choice guy, the gay guy, right? And I figured, what the hell? Let's go for it. And I decided to run. Now, unbeknownst to me, there was another guy named Stewart already on the city council, Jack Stewart.
Yes.
Right. So otherwise known as Jackpot, right? And I met Jack. Well, first of all, I had to go through a process to get the nomination, right? So Ward 6 was a new ward. It was created in the center city. And first of all, I had to carpet bag myself in there to live there, so I could, be a citizen of that ward. All right. So, full disclosure, I moved from Hamilton Street over to Couch Street so that I could. I believe that's what the move was, to make sure I was in the right district. And yeah, you like that, don't you? See, folks,
I know what you're talking about.
This is good. So, so now I carpet bagged in, and I put my name into the hat because one of the firemen in the city, Tom Krakowski, I was talking to him one day, and he said, "No, Danny," he said, you should go for the nomination. You should do that, right?" And I'm like, "You really think so?" He's like, "Yeah." And he introduced me to a couple of people that were on the Democratic committee. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, okay, so I'm going to get interviewed, and they're going to say, "See you later," right? Well, it came down to 3 people that were going to be interviewed for the position, and to be the candidate. And I went into that wondering what's going to happen here, right? And I'll never forget, Harold Brzezinski was leading everything. And I remember the one question he asked. We all went in separately, but he said, "If you are not the nominee chosen this evening, do you vow that you will support the nominee that we choose?" And I said, "No, I'll run an independent campaign." Now think about the guts it took.
Yeah.
To sit there and say no. All right. And
did the other 2 say yes?
Yeah. And one was someone that worked at Plattsburgh State. The other one was a downtown business person. And I walked out with the nomination. Figure that one
You
out.
think it was? Do you think it was because of that?
I'm not. You know what? I think I actually had a platform, right?
Okay.
I felt that I could address issues for the center city because, student behavior was an atrocity back then. It was tough enough to keep a street pole in position without it being ripped out every night, let alone people urinating on porches and all this other crazy that was going on. But people in that neighborhood really wanted someone that would actually listen to them,
Mm-hmm.
and I vowed I would listen and try my best. And I also said, look, I get the whole idea of alcohol and drugs. By this time, I'm sober, right? I'm 5 years sober, and like I understand the scourge. I understand the impact of drugs in our community and drunkenness. I get it, and I can work on those things. And now I'll work with Plattsburgh State as much as I can. And I ended up with the nomination and ran for office and ended up winning my first go.
And this was what, 92, 93?
93, November 93. I remember standing in the government center downtown and they were opening up the machines. And when they opened them, you could stand behind, you could see the numbers, right? And I was looking at the first, and I walked over the second, I looked at it, I said, oh my God, I won. I can't believe I won, right? So I walked across, I think we were across the street at Democratic headquarters, and I just walked over there and I was like, I think I won, and then they announced it on Wiry that I had won. And that was the first time that a female had been Christine Rotello was elected to the city council. I believe that same year, and I, as the
Wow.
first, I think the first, well, certainly the first openly gay city councilman in the history of Plattsburgh. Who knows if I was really the first, but I certainly wasn't the last.
No, so okay, so this is great. I mean, it's like a history lesson for me too. So, and actually, when I thought you were saying how you got into politics, I thought you just like I took a college course or whatever. So the story
I
is
never
way
went to college. I've never been to college.
no, that's fine. This story is way better than I ever anticipated the lead in. So you get the city council position, Ward 6. How did it feel once you got nominated? Was it kind of surreal? Was it, you were excited? Were you nervous? Were you just kind of like completely scared shitless? Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing now.
I was really, really, really shocked.
Okay.
Right. But then I really had a sense of, okay, all right. So it was good to plan and to have an idea and to scope it out and to present it properly, right? And to not fall into the trap of, oh yeah, I'll go along with the party. You're not going to find that I ever went along with the party per se. Look at my history. Read the Press Republican over 12 and a half years. I was a chameleon. I was a Democrat. I was an independent. I was a Republican. And party in small town politics, small cities, it really doesn't matter in the end.
Yeah, I always find it like I'm not really big into politics. I definitely I look I actually look up more to local politics and national. Nationals I think is just a complete sideshow. But I think if you
Not
but
just
if you
a sideshow, it's some
I
other
guess
stuff.
I should say the main event, but there's
Yeah,
like so like the actual politics is a sideshow. Like it's
yeah,
just like all the
it's
other stuff
ridiculous.
jumps up ahead of it. But I really like local politics, and I like the idea of local politics and the idea of like what are they doing for the area. And I vote local politics usually on the person. Luckily, as I've gotten older a little bit, I've started to meet these people
Yeah,
personally, and you kind of get a feel for the like. It's kind of like when I interview people for jobs. Like, do I think they are? Do I think they're a nice person, and two, do I
right,
think they have the capacity and the willingness to learn?
right.
And it doesn't mean that the best person necessarily going in, but do I feel that their heart's really in the right place, and do I think they can execute on their ideas?
Why Bill
And
Belichick chose Tom Brady?
exactly, 199th pick, and it's greatest pick in the NFL history, and it's you look at I really enjoyed last year's. I'm sure you followed it, the mayor race last year with Chris and Scott.
No.
Okay, so the mayor was the election in November, but they both ran a good campaign, and we had since you've left, I think who took over? Was it Don Kasperzak?
Well, no. Jack Stewart was interim mayor, and
Okay.
then it went to Kasperzak, and then to Calnon, and then to Reed,
Should be Reed, yeah, and
and
then now
then
to Rosenquist.
right.
So and I never was really in politics, and I had Scott on the show, I had Chris on the show, and I felt that both of them ran a pretty clean campaign in the sense that they were just like, hey, this is what we need, and it was refreshing to see at the time. This was
Yeah, yeah,
2020, November of 2020, but
yeah.
it was cool to see it, and I think a lot of people got involved, and Chris ultimately won, but I think the day of was a very civil election around here, and it was kind of a fairly, I mean, take away all the national stuff, like
Hmm.
from a local standpoint, there was a lot of local elections that, it was just kind of the perfect storm. It just ended up being a really big year. But it was fun. It was fun to see people excited. And
Yeah.
I actually went to lunch that day with Jack Stewart's granddaughter, and we watched people were going in and voting, and she loves politics too. But we just went and
Oh, politics
had
is the Stewart blood over there in Ward 2.
yeah.
Don't ever let them fool you. Everything's political.
So
And you
she
love
enjoyed
them.
it. I've met her grandfather, but it was fun just to see kind of the buzz around. But then Chris ended up getting it, so he's doing some stuff now that um so far so good with some of the stuff that's going down. So, but
Yep.
when you went from, so how was it in council back then? Do you follow anything really in Plattsburgh to this
Yeah,
day?
I do. I still go online. I'll use up my maximum amount of clicks of stories I can on the free Press Republican app.
Yep.
And I do follow different things. The council back then was interesting because it was a big change. It was a massive change from what had been. Clyde had been mayor, had become mayor, and Mark Dame and Kasperzak and other people were on the council, and they were going out, right? And this new blood was coming in, and I think it was a time of change in Plattsburgh as well, right? So there's a realization about the Air Force Base and everything else that's happening, and there are times where, and it's cyclical, and I think it happens probably on every decade, every 15 years, there'll be a major like shift of some sort
Mhm.
of what's happening, and that was happening then, and but again, uh, Plattsburgh's an interesting place. I mean, if we want to be really, really honest about it, it's an interesting place because it's always wanted, well, I shouldn't say it has. Many people within it have always wanted it to be Burlington.
Mhm.
Many people have always wanted to emulate Burlington, a downtown like Burlington, and on and on and on. Well, Plattsburgh's downtown died years ago. And because there was not going to be a coordination between the downtown business owners and the new developers coming in. And when the mall was built, it started to kill the downtown, right?
Mhm.
So these stores that had been like staples in downtown, not like staples, but staples, the mainstays in
Like
downtown,
Merkel and all those
like Mercos and
shops.
such.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They were dying out, and everything was going up on Route 3. And you really had to start to look at the city a little different then on, well, what is Plattsburgh? What is it going to be? And how do you get a downtown that thrives, right? So economic development became a big part of Clyde Rabideau's time as mayor, was really pushing economic development, grant programs, all the kinds of stuff. Um, but when I came in, my first real controversy was stray cats, right? Stray cats. So we have this person that comes to me and says, Councilman Stewart, was counselors then, not alderman anymore. Counselor Stewart, we have stray cats down here in the flats, and we need them taken care of. And I asked, what do you mean taken care of? They got to be taken care of. They got to be gone.
Wait, Dan, I'm gonna jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Where's the flats?
That's down by where the police station is.
Okay, the only reason I'm saying that, when did that first come up? When that term first? Do you know where that term started? Was it always called the
I
flats?
have no idea how it was called the flats, but it's called the flats.
So I have a friend of mine that refers to it the flats. It's like his favorite place in Plattsburgh. And he's like, there was the flats. I've never heard of that. Most people have, and he goes, "What are you talking about? It's always been the flats." And he's not from around here, so I wasn't sure. But
Yep.
okay, so we're the same
So,
spot. So yes,
yeah,
keep going.
so I
Stray
go over to
cats.
the house and I look, and here's these cats with like 17 legs on them hopping around. So obviously we got a feral cat problem, right? And they're like frothing at the mouth, and I'm like, okay, we got to do something about this. And I remember talking to the dog catcher and saying, hey, can you like get rid of them? He said, what do you mean get rid of them? Just get rid of them.
Make them
Well,
disappear.
next
Yeah.
thing you know, there's some lady in the city that loves stray cats. And here we go. Next thing you know, the Press Republican, it's getting close to Halloween. And the Press Republican at that time was drawing their own cartoons in the paper. And they have me dressed as a cat for Halloween going door to door. And a homeowner saying, "Sorry, Counselor Stewart, we don't feed strays." That's how controversial it was. It became a cartoon in the Press Republican. Figure that one out.
I like that. So we don't have any of those political cartoons.
And I got an opponent for the next election because of it.
Just because they're fighting on the cat issue.
The cat issue is what brought him to rise. John Ford. That's what brought him into the sight line of running for office.
Cat guy. So it was just the amount of cats and the fact that these cats were sick.
Well, yeah, feral cats. You know what feral cats do, right?
They do. I'm not a cat guy, so I'm not a big cat guy. But to me, also a sick cat, and there's a ton of cats, seems like that's a problem.
Yeah, feral cats are out there just repopulating. You know, it's like rabbits, right? So they're doing their thing. But the problem is they're urinating everywhere. People's yards are smelling. They hear them going on, right? And they're getting aggravated. They can't sleep. It's like, what do? You know, so you call Counselor Stewart. He'll come down. He'll kill the cats, right? So anyway, so I totally denied that the cats were ever killed because I don't know if they were. I'd heard rumors, but you know, it's all I knew, and that was the end of that. But that was my first real controversy was the stray cat controversy.
So I'm assuming. Well, I guess set this straight. When we say you go into politics, you don't make friends. I mean, do you find that? Obviously, I'm sure you made plenty of enemies, but do you think that you obviously fostered very good relationships with many people?
Do you want to know the truth about politicians?
I'd love to.
Every politician, in my opinion, is an egotist with an inferiority complex. Right? So they have an ego as huge as whatever can be, but they're the most sensitive people in the world. When someone says, "I don't like your opinion," or "I don't think you should do that. I think you're wrong." How dare you? I'm a politician. I was elected by the people. You know, politicians are. Honestly, I mean, my view on politicians has changed dramatically since I was one, and I have lost a lot of respect for the political process, and you know, but for the most part, politicians are in office to get reelected. They're not there necessarily to do everything that you want them to do, but they are there to do what they think is right to get them enough votes to run again and win.
Is there term limits in Plattsburgh?
There is.
Mayor is 2 terms, right?
Yeah, there is now. I think when I was elected mayor, that's when the limits started to come in. We changed the term, and then I think the length of time you could stay in.
Okay, and then what about council person? Are they
same thing?
So they have like 8 years or 12 years?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's 6 or 8 years that they have. Okay. I'm not exactly how much they've played with the law since. Usually they play with that law whenever they can because they want to keep someone in office and change it and just get enough votes or something to change it. And yeah.
So what's your term limits? I'm assuming you're an advocate for term limits.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The one thing the 2 issues that I have, in at least from a political standpoint, like the president's 2 4-year terms, I think that's fine. It's Senates have no term limits. Neither do anybody in Congress. I think should have term limits. The other issues too, at least the Senate, you get 6 years, right, until you get reelected. Yeah. The problem is House of Representatives, you're running for reelection all the time because every 2 years.
All the time.
So it's like you get in, you have maybe 6 months to do stuff. It's like we got to go back on the campaign trail.
But you would think Chuck Schumer was still a congressman or something because the way he flies around New York State and lands everywhere, you know, you know, he'll attend the opening of a gas station to cut the ribbon, you know, and that's what Governor Douglas was like over in Vermont. Like he'd attend to everything. Oh, they're opening a restaurant, let's go cut the ribbon, you know. And it's like politicians need to be loved, right? They have this deep inner desire to be liked and loved. And they will do things. Now, maybe I should just speak from my own perspective, but I just see it in so many of them that it's just a part of the thing of being seen, having the appearance that you're doing what people need and that you're doing the job. and doing that as much as possible, but not so much that you have to overwhelm yourself with people asking you real questions and giving real answers. Isn't that
Yeah,
a terrible outlook on
they're
politics?
very elusive. They know how to. They know they're like a. It's like someone's trying to grab something with like
Well,
greasy hands. They just slip
state
out.
assembly, state senate, they're not in the district all the time. They're in Albany. So there's a
Hmm.
separation between the constituency. Local politics isn't like that. If you're going to be a town supervisor, town councilor, city councilor, mayor, anything like that, you have to be able, when you walk in that grocery store or into the restaurant, that you're going to be helloed, asked questions. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that I would go somewhere and someone would be like, "Oh, I need some sidewalk," okay, I'm gonna write that down. And but you have to be on all the time. The greatest thing that
Hmm.
ever happened to me about leaving politics and state government after I was done there was that I didn't have to be answerable to people anymore. That was such a weight off my shoulders. I
Hmm.
don't have to listen to the people anymore.
Do you? Did that get overwhelming?
It does. It does.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, I knew when it was time, right? I knew when it was time. In fact, John actually told me when it was time not to be mayor anymore. And when I left the state government, John told me it was time because a spouse, we don't always see it first ourselves, right?
Hmm.
But our spouse can see it and they
Yeah.
see our
He
behavior.
sees how it's affecting you, maybe at home or
Exactly.
just. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's always been my barometer of change.
Hmm. So the so when you want, I guess when you ran for mayor, what caused you to run for mayor? So this is the election of what, 1999. So what caused you to want to run for mayor from a council
There's
person?
so much that goes into that. So I did my first term, then I ran for office again. When I was running for office, that was 1995, and I had got a call at 4 a.m. from my sister telling me that my parents had just been killed and that I needed to get back to Rhode Island. And this was in November, and
Oh,
we had just had the election, and I went back to Rhode Island. My mother had passed, my stepfather hadn't, but he really never came back into any being anyway. And it was very tragic, but I got a lot of support out of everybody, during that time. But then between 95 and 97, or 96 and 98, uh, things were changing a little. There's friction going on in the council, right? And it started to be a little bit of friction between myself and Clyde Rabideau, and it was just kind of one of those times where it was, again, I'd go along with a lot of stuff, but not everything, right? You have to be independent to some degree. You just can't be a yes man or a yes woman. And I went ahead and up into 1998, I think was the year of the ice storm, right? And the ice storm hit, and when it hit, that's when the coup d'état took place. All right, that was the coup d'état. That's where I, as mayor pro tem, we were having a meeting in the basement, I think, of the police department, city council,
and
and mayor.
John, what's mayor pro tem mean?
Who's John?
Or not John? Dan. You just said John. Sorry, Dan. The mayor pro tem is a temporary mayor for.
Yeah, that's the mayor
What?
wannabe. That's the mayor wannabe.
Oh,
And,
wannabe. Okay.
yeah, and it's the one
Okay.
that's if the mayor's gone, you run the meetings.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry.
Right?
Continue.
You're the fill-in. You're the vice president, right?
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Perfect.
yeah. So where I think at the police department having a council meeting there during the ice storm or something, and I remember that the coup d'état took place. I was replaced as mayor pro tem, and I think Jack Stewart took it. Right? That was the start of the end. Right? So drama, get the drum rolling back to right. That was the
Good sound
start of the
effects.
end for myself and Clyde at that time in our lives. And so for the next 2 years, I actually, I think I went independent, and I was an independent candidate after that. And Yeah, after that I was an independent, and then I became a Republican. And I became a Republican because the Republicans wanted me to run for mayor. No one was going to run against Clyde Rabideau. You see, you have to understand something here.
So Clyde was a Democrat at the time.
Oh, he was always a Democrat. Yeah.
Okay. So I know the name Clyde. I don't know him personally, but I'm aware of who he is.
Clyde
Yeah.
Rabideau, I said this during our debate when we had it for the mayor's race, will go down in history, I hope, as probably the best mayor that the city of Plattsburgh ever had. Right. But then I added a caveat, which I won't repeat here. It was a TGTS debate. I added a caveat. But in my mind, even today, I believe that he took Plattsburgh on a direction of recovery. But I don't think Plattsburgh was ready to go along for the full ride. And he did a lot of things for downtown Plattsburgh, bringing in boatloads of money for cleaning up the buildings and getting new businesses downtown. And there was so much that he did. And Rosemary Schoonmaker at the Community Development Office. I mean, it was really good. But politics was our problem. I had no problem with the great things he did, but I had problems politically. We had problems. So I remember I got a call from somebody in the Republican Party, of which I will not name, and they said, "Hey, blah 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 blah." I said, "Well, yeah, I'm going to move to Montreal, and I'm going up there. I had a boyfriend in Montreal at that time, and I said I'm going to move up there and live up there." And he said, "Well, maybe you should think about running for mayor." And I said, "Why would I do that? No one's going to beat Clyde, right?" And then I get an invitation to go to Albany. So I drove down to Albany, and I ended up sitting in a room with another individual of some power in Albany who said, "I think you should run for mayor of Plattsburgh." I said, "You do, huh?" He goes, "Yeah." And we had a conversation about a few things, and I left there knowing that I was going to be running for mayor of Plattsburgh. And then I had to figure out, how do I do this? Because I just had a news conference weeks before saying I wasn't going to run for city council again, and I was leaving politics at the end of 1999. And now all of a sudden, I have to figure out how I'm going to explain, not only am I not leaving, I'm running for mayor. So, of course, I did the typical politician thing, and they all do it. Trust me, they'll lie to you if they don't agree to this. I've had so many calls, people saying, "Dan, you can't leave. We need new direction. You should run for mayor." I'm overwhelmed by the amount of people since I made my announcement I was leaving politics. I have to stay. That's political. that, my friend, is politics.
So before the conversation you had with the rep up here, and then before the conversation down in Albany, had it crossed your mind? Was it something where you're kind of like, maybe, but I'm kind of done?
I'll tell you when it crossed my mind. When I first ran for office, I remember campaigning with Clyde. We were walking down South Catherine Street, and we're walking along, going door to door with our brochures. And he said, "Wave." I said, "What?" He goes, "Wave." I said, "At who?" He said, "The cars. Wave at the cars." So we're just like waving, walking along and waving. People are beeping their horns, right? He said, "Yep, they see us." I was like, "Wow, this guy knows what he's doing," right? And then through the years, we got to a point, and I remember that I was kind of kicking it around in my own mind, and talked to a couple other people who naturally ran back to him and said, "Hey, Dan might be thinking of running." But I remember one time Clyde said to me, he said, "Daniel," he said, "you're a good legislator, but I don't think that you'll be a good mayor. But as a council, you're good. But I don't think you'd be a good mayor. I don't think that's your thing." Clyde had an accounting background and all this other stuff. I had a troubled childhood and homelessness in that same city years before, and all the other issues that go along with Daniel Stewart. And I think sometimes it's very easy to talk to someone in a position I was in to say, "No, you don't want to do that. You won't achieve." But what happened when people said, "Do you really want to run for office or city council?" I said, "Yeah, I want to do it." After that conversation, that's when I was open to running for mayor. And he
Wait, the conversation where he told you not to run for mayor?
Where he told me that I probably wasn't qualified to, yeah.
And how long how long was this conversation to the time you actually ran?
Couple months.
Oh, well, so it was
a couple months before I agreed down in Albany to be a candidate.
Okay.
All right. So
was it just because it was kind of again, you kind of said the ego thing. Was it just he said you couldn't, so you said, "Screw you, I'm going to do it"?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I love it.
Yeah.
Competitiveness. Yeah. I love that.
And but it was tough though, because I got to be honest. Even at times that I didn't get along with Clyde, I still admired Clyde. Right. I admired his tenacity and his energy. Right. The guy was good. I looked up to him in many ways. So So I decided I'm going to run, and at that time, Senator Stafford was meeting with me, and we're talking about it, and da 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 da. We did a poll, right? So it's now toward the end of summer. We do a poll. This is probably July, August. I'm 34 points behind in the poll.
Wow.
Right, 34 points. You can't make that up and win an election. That's impossible.
And you've already at this point you were set. You guys were the two that were running.
Yep. Yeah, we were running. Had the nominations, had the whole gig going, right? And I'm like, okay. And then of course Clyde is like, oh, Dan Stewart's going to go out and get all that PAC money from all the gay groups, and but he had done a lot of things for the gay community because he was trying to become lieutenant governor at one time, and he was very involved at the state level when he was trying to be the lieutenant governor candidate with gay groups, and gay groups didn't want to give me money because they didn't want to offend Clyde, right?
Oh.
So think about the dynamic of that. So I made it. I told people, I'm going to a whole boatload of money from the gay groups, man. It's going to be an amazing amount of money for this campaign. And that would get back to him. They'd be like, the gays are sending them the money. And, at the same time, they weren't, because they didn't want to get in the middle of it, right? Because they had an ally in Clyde. So I'm just putting out misinformation. And I think it worked. And so then I did get some money from outside, but the majority of my money, the great majority, came from inside. It came from the state. It came, from people across the state, from the local community, business community, and it was really interesting because then at one point I said, like, we got to do something different. And Media Central was my group that was doing my campaign, and we came up with the idea, because I went up to Montreal so often. We came up with the idea to get one of those billboard trucks from Montreal down in Plattsburgh with a big sign on each side of elect mayor, Dan for mayor, right? So I go up there and I negotiate it, and the driver comes down one day, and here's this like 20-foot long, like sloped in thing, and I'm like, oh my God, this is great. It has a picture of the eagle on the monument and me and all this, and it's crazy, right? I'm like, this is the greatest thing. And at night you turn the lights on and it glows, right? So that first night there was a football game down at Bailey Park, and I took the truck and I went down in through that parking lot area, and I'm going along. And you could see people in the stands standing up and looking out. What the hell is that, right? And here I go with the Dan Stewart from Mayor truck, right? And it was hilarious, right? So we start driving around. So within a couple of days, though, the opposition was upset. First of all, they came out and accused me of hiring non-Americans, to work for me, driving a vehicle in the United States, and it was illegal. So we sent the driver back to Quebec, and we just drove the truck after that. And and Quebec, the province that was so close and near and dear to Plattsburgh at that time, and its leadership, it was hilarious. But then all of a sudden, one day, we're being followed, and it's a North Country junk truck of some sort, that they had hung a whole bunch of banners on, elect Clyde, right? So you had like this Rolls Royce going down, being followed by like a Chevy Vega, right? And at one point, their driver tried to drive ours off the road. All right, that's how nasty it can get. That is not hyperbole. That's the truth. All right, and I think Joe Templio interviewed me on that way back in the day, and it's hilarious. So we got this junk truck chasing this really slick Montreal marketing truck, and all of a sudden the numbers, are starting to get closer, right? And it was about 5 days before the election when I got a call, and someone said, you are pacing 1.5 points behind, but you will pace to win for maybe under a percentage point. I said, you kidding? Like, no, you could win this thing. All depends on what happens in the media in the next few days. And then all of a sudden there was this news thing that came out that I'm not even going to talk about, but it was bad. And not for me, but it was bad. And, so everything hits the fan. Anyway, election day comes, and I remember that, I'm sitting at Christine Rotella's house. I think it was. I think it's where we were. And I had a friend of mine that was with me, and we're sitting there talking, and all of a sudden the numbers are coming in, and they're like, Wiry, Dan Stewart's the next mayor of Plattsburgh. Now, I'm like, what? This happened? And I looked at my friend John, and I said, John, no, my husband John, but a friend John. I said, John, I'm not going to swear here, but I said, what the do I do now? And he looked at me and laughed. He said, everything you've been talking about for the last 6 months, that's what you have to do now. Let's go up to headquarters. So we went up to Republican headquarters. I'm a Republican now, right? Rhino, Republican in name only. And the Republican Party knew that. Everybody knew I wasn't a Republican per se. And so I rhinoed up with John to headquarters and walked in and walked up the microphone. It's a great night. And then I think it was, I forget, David something from PTZ. He goes, Mayor, Councilman Stewart, there's still like 700 absentee ballots out there that haven't been counted. And this is a 60-vote race. He said, can you really claim victory? And I remember saying, David, for now, it's the taste of victory. It's a great feeling. We'll see what the outcome is later. But for right now, it feels good, right? I had no other answer because I forgot about the absentee ballots.
Yeah.
Right? I'm in the moment. And we that was at the American Legion, I believe, up on, what the heck's road? It's up off, anyway. And we're at the American Legion, and I leave. And I said to John, I said, oh my God, all those votes are out there. I wonder what's going to happen. He goes, well, we'll see, So a couple of days later, and while I'm at headquarters, Governor Pataki calls, right? And I have a video of this, and I'm on the phone. Excuse me, it's the governor, and everybody's like, yeah, right, like yeah, governor, da da da, and talking to him, and he's held me up in a couple of days. So sure enough, he flies up in a couple of days.
Wow.
And he lands. We meet at the airport. All the cameras there, of course, and here comes Governor Pataki. It was a good year for him. He had, I think, a Hispanic, a black, and a gay that got elected that he had supported. And it was good for the Republican Party, right? And it was showing more of a tent in New York State, which he was truly there. That's where he was as a governor. I love the guy. He really did so much for Plattsburgh, and through me being a mayor, we got a lot that we didn't normally deserve in Plattsburgh. And so I meet him, and we're sitting in the restaurant in the airport having an egg salad sandwich or something. And he goes, so I hear some absentee ballots. I said, don't worry about it. We're fine. He goes, like, how many are there? I said, 600 or 700. He goes, well, what do you think you won out of them? I said, I have no clue. He's like, okay. He said, well, don't lose it. I said, okay. And he left, flew out. And then after everything was all told, I think I won by 104 votes. I actually added 30 some odd votes.
Well, that's actually pretty. So, yeah, that's wild. So in 3-4 months, or what do you say, August? So 4 months, you ended up going, or less than 4 months, you went from 30 down to
30 down to
one bit barely
less than 1% win. Yeah.
So how was that? So again, base here, Clyde was a 5-term mayor, so he'd been there for well over a decade, almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So was that, again, at the time, I was a kid, but so I don't remember as much. I'll actually tell you my story of what I remember.
Right.
And it's nothing too crazy, but so the whole thing when you got elected, I mean, I'm assuming that kind of shock waves through the area.
Well, it was interesting because I think, yes, it gave shockwaves, but it also showed that Plattsburgh is this micro. It's like this little pocket of liberalism to a degree in the North Country, right? It's the city of the North Country, so it really showed a diversity openness, and the fact that happened and that it continues to happen up there, and that anybody in Plattsburgh can run for city council or mayor and win. I believe that in Plattsburgh. Mm-hmm. If you have the right message, you can win. It's salesmanship. Politics is salesmanship. You have to sell yourself, right? You sell homes, right? Mm-hmm. You have a shtick. You give you a spiel, right? And you sell homes based on what the home is. This is the structure. This is what it will hold. This is what this is good for, right? It's the same thing in politics. So if you ran for mayor, you could win being a mayor. I don't care how popular the other guy is. And it's not as though Clyde was a bad mayor, because he wasn't. I still think he's the best mayor the city's ever had. But it was time for change at that moment by the slimmest of margins. And that's how it all went down. And in ways, I felt bad, to be honest with you. I felt bad because I admired Clyde. though we had some differences, I admired the guy, and I felt kind of like guilty to a certain degree. But at the same time, it was a great opportunity to say, "Hey, okay, here's the new direction. Let's go. Let's see what we can do." And that started a 6.5 year stretch until I left to go to the state.
So, so during that time, like, what could you sum up in like the 6 years? So 2000, 2006. What was
2000,
that?
yeah.
So during that time, what was how could you sum up kind of what you did during that time, or how you got Plattsburgh to how you left Plattsburgh?
Well, when I started in as mayor, I think one of the most important thing was to talk with Dan Winicky over at Park and to talk about the reuse of the Air Force Base and to accelerate that motion of taking ownership of the old base and making it a part of the city and to take over the properties. Now, there was some underground pipes around the oval that had asbestos, and we would be subjected to that and have to deal with potentially having to remove asbestos piping at some point. So if you ever read the book Flying High in Plattsburgh, go over to that bookstore over on the corner of Margaret and City Hall Place and get yourself one of them in there. Yeah, in fact, last time I was up there, I bought two of them. And in there, it says that, I was a bit of a shrewd negotiator, right? When you add up the fact that the city ended up owning the maintenance facility for vehicles on the new base, we ended up owning the gym, all of the properties that we wanted, all of the vehicles that we wanted, everything on my list that I gave, they gave us for us to take on a $1.3 million responsibility for a bunch of pipes, right? So that was a mega deal. It was a huge mega deal. And I'll never forget when Dan Winicky and I were going to open up the gates of that old base because they had gated the base. And Dan and I were in front of the cameras, and Dan had no hair. So I got him a Gorbachev patch to put on his bald head. And I had a Reagan mask, right? There's Mr. Winicky, tear down that fence.
That's what you guys did on TV?
Yeah. I mean, it's hilarious, right? I mean, it's absolutely hilarious. I had fun with Dan Winicky. Now, Dan Winicky was a pain in the ass too, all right? Dan Winicky was a shrewd negotiator. Dan Winicky could run circles around some people, and he had a shtick. But we worked well together, and I think we did a lot of good on the reuse of the base together. Him and his team, and me and my team, and getting that moving. But there were certainly a lot of different things that happened over those 6 years. But that's how it started. Was the Air Force Base. We had to show the community that things were going to move, things were going to happen, right? And that's why the U.S. Oval, all those buildings out there, went up for sale. Why they were sold, and those are some of the first pieces of the base that really turned into a lucrative venture for anybody. Was all that housing and the properties that were opened up by it, where like Latinville built some stuff down there, and others were building different things and renovating things, and I was bringing in outside developers as well, and people were ticked off about that. And I'm like, well, then get your checkbook out and write the same check they're writing, and then you can't cry about it,
Yeah.
But I mean, people were taking risks. Neil was risking it, Seaton was risking it, Latinville, there was a lot of risk taking place. But I think that I think everyone I just mentioned, they all in their hearts are Plattsburgh people, and they have a belief in where they live, and they had a belief that the future would be good, and that the investments would be sound, and they were right. They were right to do it, and I'm glad that they did it. I'm glad that they got those checkbooks out and did that, and have had the successes that they've had. And the city, of course, was able to get all of the U.S. Oval and the gym and the maintenance facility for our public works department, get them out of that old crappy stuff they were in on whatever street it was, and put them out on the base. And those were big changes for us. And opening up the waterfront. Frank Pabst used to have his boat down there to do the booze cruises, and it was a junkyard, right? And I was able to get $6 million from the state and the Fed to move the rail yard off that waterfront and put it out in the Air Force Base. They redirected the D&H Railroad, and it went across the air base. That's why you have a park down on the waterfront. That's why you have that huge parking lot everybody still bitches about, and they need to get over it, because I brought in, with the Chamber of Commerce, we brought in all those FFW. What do you got? What are you looking at? Oh, you're
That's your
looking at
parking
it.
lot.
All right, beautiful.
That's your parking lot right there.
That's it right there. The
That's
parking
it. That's
lot
my
to
office every day. I
nowhere.
look at it.
Let me tell you about the parking lot to nowhere, people that can all take a hike. All right, I'm telling you right now, I couldn't say it then. Take a hike, people, because you're whining. You need some cheese for your wine. All right. The fact is that you have major tournaments for bass in that lake, and it brings in economic development. No, the hotel wasn't successful, but you know what? I got you the money to clean up all the environmental dangers that were down there, so you could have public spaces and be able to use it up until today and for the generations of your children and grandchildren to come. All right, so there, take it, stick it. All right, stick it. Every damn one of you that whined about it, stick it.
Dan, that was the best summary I've ever had about that, but I love it. Yes, I look at it every day, and I think it's like, you know, and I think one of the reasons I love my office, like a metaphor, is like I get to look at it every single day. So I look at what do we call it, your parking lot, or someone's parking lot. We look at it here, and you know, it's kind of cool because you kind of can see eventually that will start to be developed and used. But it's like anything; it takes time. It's not, you can't snap your fingers and it's done. You know,
Well,
10 years, all of a sudden, this is like all popped up.
You know, I mean, look, it's like everywhere. Nobody's ever satisfied.
Yeah.
All right. Nobody's ever satisfied, right? Well, why didn't they do this? Why don't they do that? You know, and it's like, okay, well, you elect the people. They come forward with ideas. You get what you get.
Well, the other thing with politics is there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks or Monday morning quarterbacks. They'll sit there and they'll dissect everything. But then you look at
the people that will never run for office. They
oh,
are
absolutely. And then, but then you look at there's always, and again, I just talking to people and talking to anybody that makes decisions, talking with politics or politicians. If you ask them questions, they always say, yeah, but these were some facts that people don't know about. And it's like, you never know all the facts. You're looking at the end result. Why'd you put up a parking lot? That's stupid. Do it this way. And I hear it all the time. And I'm like, if we were a fly on the wall at the meetings and knew everything that, you know, Dan and whoever was there knew, then you would understand that, you know, a decision they made. The most decisions I would think are done pretty logically or, you know, with the facts. And you sound like you make a rash decision and be like, I don't know. We just kind of threw the dart at the map and that's where it landed.
The building at the end of the city parking lot, right? The one that was built there, right? That was a Vermont developer that built that, right?
Yep.
When I wanted to put that down there, we came forward with those plans, all hell broke loose, right? First of all, the downtown business community.
This is Durkee, the Durkee Street.
Yeah, Durkee.
The glass building. Yep.
Yeah. And, you know, the downtown business owners are always protective of themselves. You know, they have their piece of the pie, right? Now they have a choice. The pie can get bigger and they can have a larger slice, or they can have that piece of pie and hope that it doesn't erode. And that's the way I look at it, right? That's how I see business in downtown Plattsburgh. That's how I saw it. So we did our best to change just as Clyde had started with the renovations and facade program, we continued that, then did some outdoor seating areas and that little one-way slot that went up in between up towards Bono Pizza and all this other stuff. And we had flowers out during the summer, like prettying it up, doing the best we could to make it the best it could be for what we had. Because we didn't have a core downtown business per se, like Burlington. And folks, we never were. We never were, because Plattsburgh is not Burlington. Plattsburgh was a Plattsburgh State, Plattsburgh Air Force Base town. That's what it was. And we built people built their livelihoods off of that. And then when it started to transition, other things transitioned, but there was always this self-protectiveness of downtown Plattsburgh from its owners down there. And I think that sometimes to the detriment of that downtown. And, you know, there was constantly complaints about, oh, there's not enough parking down here. Okay, well, let's try to add more parking. We'd add it. Then the next thing you know, these restaurants coming in and saying, oh, we want Jersey barriers out on the road to block off areas where we can sit people out there. Oh, I thought you had no parking. Right? So, you know, it's kind of like the yin and the yang. You know, like, we don't have enough parking spots, but give me the 5 in front of my business so I can sit people in chairs and breathe in the exhaust of people while they eat their fish. All right. So, you know, those are the things that in the daily life of the mayor, you have to try to, you know, listen to, understand, placate, deal with, and sometimes just try to shut it out of your head. You know, when these things come in, because sometimes they had no rhyme or reason. Other times they made perfect sense. There were times that folks in the business community came in with the greatest idea I'd ever heard. And I'd say, yeah, let's try to do that. And other times they come in, I'm like, are they smoking crack? I mean, what is up
Yeah.
with these folks?
Yeah. I well, and that's the other thing too, is if I think if everybody does it with the intent of like one of the things that I think we're getting locally, and again, I'm speaking from like my generational, and I find there's a lot of people, young professionals that are really starting to get another resurgence of pro Plattsburgh, and and I think a lot of them, if they make decisions with the idea to better Plattsburgh, I think we're moving in the right direction. I
Yeah.
think as soon as people start making decisions where their decisions is very like egotistical, very
That's
me
right.
centric, I said we're going
Yeah.
to fail. And I think a lot of people, if they come to you with an agenda or they come with you with some type of like, hey, this is my issue, and I'm really making this decision. It's kind of like when someone joins a PTO group or a school board because they got a vendetta against somebody and they want to get on just to make someone's life miserable. Where it's like, are you getting on it because of the kids? You're getting on because of the town, the city, or what, which have you? But
That's it.
yeah, and I think do you find that is that carried along pretty good, or did you find that you had to deal with a
No.
lot of?
You know what? There were certain people in downtown that really made some wise investments and some wise moves. John Seaton, I think, I think he made some risky moves, and there were positive moves for downtown. Some other folks did some positive downtown stuff, but then when we would come forward with an idea, and I remember one time we had the Bove project, and we were going to put it where that other parking lot is across from that bookstore we talked about earlier,
Mhm.
and we thought maybe a Dunkin' Donuts ribbon retail down below, while it's right across from the Coffee Cat. Well, okay, so now we got Dunkin' Donuts versus Coffee Cat. And oh my God, we're going to have lower middle income people in that building. And then the argument was, well, the kids won't have grass to play on. All right, well, look, I grew up in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, the concrete city. All right. Uh, when I lived in New York City for years, in New York City, kids walked on concrete everywhere and occasionally found a park. All right. Kids can't fail because they don't have grass immediately on their front yard.
Mhm.
Kids fail for reasons other than just living in a downtown. Why fear living in a downtown? Well, some people I believe, just didn't want lower or medium income people getting those housing pieces downtown. They thought it would ruin their downtown. So it was always that struggle of, you know, I the the selflessness and the selfishness. And again, it's what part of the pie do you want, and how far are you willing to go to make that downtown something special? And I think that's where it takes that. It takes a new generation to change downtown Plattsburgh. It takes that new generation. But as long as they don't have blinders on, right? And they can open those blinders a little bit to views of many people and be able to take that input and make sound decisions, I'm all for it. I mean, look, I wish nothing but the best for Plattsburgh. Plattsburgh played a huge role in my life. I mean, my whole coming into being was Plattsburgh, New York. So I want it to succeed. But sometimes it can be its own worst enemy. And that's unfortunate. But it takes that new blood. It takes new leadership. It takes youth, right? The old guard sometimes has to step aside and let the younger ones come in because it's their future, it's their kids, their grandchildren. And what are they going to leave for them? Yes, the other ones, you've done the best you could, whether it was good or bad in anybody's eyes, including my own. You did what you did. Hopefully, the new ones come in and make it even better.
Yeah, yeah, and that's my as again as I get a little older, and I think you ran for council about the same age I am now, so it's like kind of I can see the parallels where it's not that I want to run for council, but I'm saying like I'm starting
Why
to
not?
understand
Why
what,
not?
huh? I
Why
don't live
not?
in the city, so that's the first thing.
Oh.
The the I have to get on Couch Street though.
Oh,
Okay.
you're one of those people. So you don't live in the city. You use our roads. You don't pay taxes for them. You come
Nothing.
in and mess up our roads, give us potholes, and you take a free ride on the city with your no
Not,
tax town.
not only that, Dan, I complain about the potholes too. So we
Oh, I bet you do.
I hit them and I complain about them, so it's good.
When I was
The
first elected, everything was gay. All right. So the Press Republican would do a story. The first openly gay elected mayor responded that the telephone pole blah or the pothole blah. And I went over to the Press Republican editors and I said, the potholes aren't gay. The telephone poles aren't gay. The streets and sidewalks are not gay. I am. It's not applicable to every story. Please stop gayifying this city. right? It doesn't all have to be gay. If you went back to those first year and looked at every press Republican story, Joe Lo Templio, yes, and then the first openly gay mayor of the in New York for the city of Plattsburgh said, "Yeah, I think it's going to be a sunny day tomorrow." Because we had to preface it with that.
So I guess how was that being openly gay in politics, especially probably in a more conservative, not as progressive as other parts of the country, and not like nowadays we laugh about it because it doesn't seem like it, like, to me, like, that doesn't matter. Like if somebody's
I had a Kevlar vest. I had a Kevlar vest for my inauguration.
Really,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, like I said, I was a kid, so like you don't even recognize it in historical context. But like, I mean, it was a big like.
Yeah, we
that
never
was
talked about that. I don't even think I've ever said that publicly.
Wow.
Yeah, I wore one when I was inaugurated because we had threats, and I talked to the chief and talked to other people. Yeah, there were moments where I was very worried because of it, and and there were some that were a little more extreme in our area that would, I've never really talked about that, but I have to say this, even though that was happening, the public at large had nothing to do with that. The voters at large had nothing to do with that, and I knew that. So,
Mm-hmm.
although there was some fear and threats in the beginning and stuff, that was not a Plattsburgh problem. It was a people problem, just a few, right? But
Yeah.
it was worrisome. And but the other positive part is I could play the gay card to the Fed in the state. All right. So if you look at the amount of money that came in during my time as mayor and compare it to any other mayor on a apples to apples basis of what the money was worth, I will hands down kick their butts across the board on the amount of money that came in from the Fed and the state into Plattsburgh while I was a mayor.
So being the first openly gay mayor this is New York State, right? This wasn't
right
nationally, but still that carried weight all the way to the federal level.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
now,
I mean, look, when I could go down to Washington D.C. and go see Chuck Schumer or Hillary Clinton whenever I wanted to, and meet up with them and say, "Hey, I need this money for a water project," or this, that, and the other. I don't know that others did that, right? I don't know that others took. I took travel very seriously, right? And I got beat up for it when I left because Kasperzak went after me on some bogus crap, which turned out to be nothing in the end. But I traveled a lot in order to go to Albany and Washington to be known and to be a player that could get money. You see that shovel right there?
Yeah.
That shovel went in the ground at the Champlain border crossing station for a $250 million project that took place. Now, Gary at the chamber, the politicians all up in the North Country, but I was in Washington pushing as well. And I have a shovel, and it's here in my home office. I'm a global worker. I was on last night with Australia. I'll be on after you today with Belgium. That shovel I get asked about all the time, and I tell the story about it, right? How Dan Stewart went to Washington to do his part to help get that money for that new border station up in Champlain, St. Bernard-de-la-Colle. And that is what I did as a mayor. I highlighted Plattsburgh as a player. I used my access being an openly gay elected politician to go wherever the hell I had to go. Republicans, Democrats, I didn't care. And I would ask and I would get. And I am proud of that.
So I had Gary on this a handful, and Gary's one of my all-time favorite podcasts. Now, Gary I have a lot of admiration for purely for the fact of what you just said was right up Gary Douglas's alley. He goes, "Hey, he's a strategist." He goes, "You figure out a way to do it." He had a background in politics. Obviously, you know Gary well.
Yep.
And Gary talks about that. He said, I went to DC and they started to try to drop the funding. Go, "How much do you need?" He goes, $250 million. And they kept dropping. He goes, "I need $250 million." And eventually they got it.
Yeah.
But Gary said the same thing. He goes, "You have to take the advantage that we have. You have to show why we're important to the big guys."
That's
and
right.
then he goes, "But you have to lean in on that and make sure that you're doing everything they need, so they look at you as an asset. And then you also have to be patient, but you got to keep pressing."
Hey,
so,
you know what? Gary can be the most aggressive person to a political and person in DC or Albany. He can be very aggressive, but he's been very effective. And some people are like, "Ah, him again, right? Him again," because the guy believes in what the hell he's doing.
Yeah.
Right? And he truly believes in it, and he pushes it, and he works for it, and he's probably one of the, I don't know to today, but one of the more underrated true champions of the North Country. Not just Plattsburgh, but the North
Absolutely.
Country. And what he has done is what others were not willing to do. They wouldn't get off their ass and go to Washington. They wouldn't get off their ass and go to Albany. I did. I'd parallel track him. I'd go and do that. I remember him coming to my office and saying, "Hey, I don't think that you should be like continuing your war post-election with Clyde Rabideau. It's not good for anybody. It's about what you're going to do for this city." All right.
Mm-hmm.
Good smack in the face. And he gave it to me. I don't even know if he remembers doing that. Right. But those things have to happen. But he was aggressive enough to be a pain in the ass to everybody, and probably still is today. But he's the most effective non-elected person that the North Country has ever had, in my opinion.
Absolutely. If Plattsburgh had a Mount Rushmore, Gary Douglas is on it, in my opinion. So
he has to be.
He's yeah. I mean, he looks like a little Godfather, but he's effective like one too. And no, I think it's great. So I'm kind of going down a couple things here. So the two things because again, I was young. The two things that I remember most about you in your time as mayor. The first one, very, very quickly, was I was at the Mayor's Cup 2000. The only reason I remember this because I still follow this band to this day. We had a band down.
There was a missing kid at that one, I think. Is that the one?
Oh, maybe it wasn't me.
All right.
So maybe it was. I don't know, but
I
don't remember if I was. So, but I remember going down. There was a concert down right by the monument. It was the band Strange Folk. I don't know if you remember them.
Yeah.
Great. I still follow them to this day. Actually, the last show I saw before COVID, the shutdown, was actually the lead singer over in Vermont.
Really?
Solo. But I remember you getting up and announcing and bringing them on. And I don't even think I knew it was you at the time. I just knew it was the mayor. Right. And you got up and said something about we have strange folks in here today or something like that. And then they ended up playing this concert, which you can actually find online. I found there's a website that actually has a recording of it. I don't know if it has you, but they had fireworks. There's a break in there for fireworks.
Send me the link. Send me the link.
I'm almost positive your voice is probably in the beginning announcing them, but I'd have to go back and look. So I'll send the I'm writing it down now, but I'll send that over to you. But again, one of my favorite bands. I think that was like my first band ever, first concert I ever went to. I was probably like 9 or 10. Let me see, Mayor's Cup. According to Dan, there we go. I'll make sure I get this. Is very important. Right. I'll make sure I'll get that to you. And then the other thing that I remember back in the, I don't know what year it was. You can probably tell me, but the whole Stop Hate thing that went on.
Yeah.
That was with what, the West.
Oh my God, what a story that is.
What a story go through that, because I mean, I remember it, and it was a complete circus, but obviously you were the center of the attention at that point. So
all right. So I already told you, I didn't go to college. All right. I don't have a degree in anything other than being a human being. But if I could have ever thought this out ahead of time, I'd be a genius. It all happened by mistake. All right. But there are people to this day that think I did it on purpose, but it was by mistake. So as a gay person, I, of course, stay attuned to the hate groups that hate me and other people like me.
Yep.
And there was this group out there. And at that time, you have to remember a few things. Now, so you don't remember the Vagina Monologues, do you?
I'm aware of the name. I've never. Those are at Plattsburgh State, right?
Yeah. So Plattsburgh State was going to put on the Vagina Monologue event, and they had called the electric department in Plattsburgh, MLD, and they had said, we want to put the banners across at the entrance of the city that the Vagina Monologues are coming. All right. And the head of MLD called me up. He goes, Mayor, I got a problem. I said, what's wrong? He goes, I don't know how to talk about this. I said, just say it. Well, it's Vagina Monologues. I said, what? He goes, it's Plattsburgh State, the women's group. They want to put these banners across on the poles of the city, saying Vagina Monologues. And I said, what? And he goes, well, do you want to do it? I said, hell no, I don't want to do that. Right? He goes, okay. All right. So he turns him down. Well, enter controversy. Right? Suddenly, I get a call from the Press Republican. I think it was Joe Lo Templio. Hey, listen, I need a. No, it wasn't Joe. It was a lady that was working. She worked, I think, in the Malone newspaper too, or that area, and she called her and said, the women's group put in for this. You know, I forget the name of the group. I want to say women's group, but the and they want to do this, and apparently you said no. Now I was actually in Montreal when she called, and I was in a conference, right? And I'm busy. And I'm like, listen, I don't have time to talk to you right now. And she's like, I need a quote because we're going to print, right? I said, fine. I will not have any vaginas hanging across the poles of my city. We're not going to do that. Well, I might not have said that the proper way. All right. And all of a sudden I became mayor anti vagina monologue. And my email crashed. You know, email wasn't as good as it is today.
Mm-hmm.
I just got, I mean, every women's group across the country was emailing me, boatloads of them, just killing my email inbox with, you know, you're a hater, you hate women, and all this other. And I'm like, I marched with you. I'm pro-choice. I marched with you. So I went to Planned Parenthood, and I said to the lady there, I said, Kathy, I marched with you. I've marched in front of you. What is going on here? Well, you shouldn't talk that way, you know. And I'm like, are you kidding me? All I've tried to do, I've always tried to do things that are good for women. And anyway, it became a big controversy. Sold out every show at Plattsburgh State. And for the first show, I was actually there up in the area high above where they look down upon the crowd, but you're not in the crowd, just so I could see what was going on, right? And then I got snuck out of there, but I wanted to see it. But I think the controversy helped them to sell it out. But I ended up, I mean, it was in the London Times, all right?
Jeez.
All right. I mean, that's how bad it was, right? I got hammered. There's never been a better proponent of women and their rights to make choice than I, as a mayor of that city. I don't, unless someone's done something more legitimate since me. Yeah, that was quite the experience. I'll never forget that one. What was the other one we were talking about before I went off into left?
And I'm assuming that was more of just like, I just don't want a banner hanging up above. That could have been anything.
Yeah,
It could have been a banner,
yeah,
motorcycle club or something like that.
yeah.
Like, no, I don't want a banner up there.
Note to self: stop, listen to the question, and answer it properly. Don't go off the cuff, because if you do, you're going to get slammed.
No, so the original thing I was going was the old. I just remember the what is it? The Baptist church that came and they had like the
So
signs and
so it was Mayor's Cup, right? And
yes.
And someone, I think the pro-life folks. Oh, here's another one, right? Yeah, so the pro-life folks come in, they want to have a booth at Mayor's Cup. And I'm like, no, we don't want to turn it into a political thing, because the next thing you know, such and such will be in here looking for a booth. Well, the next day, after the Press Republican runs their little newspaper article, they get a fax, and I get a fax from that group out in whatever state, Kansas or wherever the heck they were, and it showed stick men in a scene of sexual perversion, let's say, and your fag mayor has said these things, and that queer is no good, and your whore churches in Plattsburgh are going to pay, and we want a booth, and if you refuse us, we will take you to court. Imagine that. So I'm thinking to myself, you just opened your mouth again. You know? So all hell breaks loose. Police department has to plan for the arrival of, and they get their booth, or they get to come and protest, but they're going to be protesting all the churches, because this Satanistic city with its churches has allowed a homo to be elected. And God hates queers, and God hates fags, and AIDS kills homos, and all those signs, and then anti-church signs that they brought with them. Anyway, we were having some problems. John and I were getting some problems at home over it, and you know, with threats, and the chief of police, Desi Rasco, at that time, he said, "Mayor, now just do me a favor. All right, now this is a guy that was my best man. All right, at my wedding. Right?
Okay.
Mayor, I need you to do me a favor. Just stay home." I looked, I said, what? Because need you and John just to stay home. Don't incite anything. We don't need any issues. We don't need any lawsuits. So I went and talked to John about it, and John said, him? we'll go do whatever we want to do. So the day of the arrival of that group, and they're on these different corners protesting our beautiful churches. And we're going by St. Peter's, and we see this huge outbreak going on, and all the people from St. Peter's are going to St. Peter's, right? And they're all going in there because the churches are doing like a peaceful counter protest of people just going to church and sitting there and having a session, a church session, right? And now I didn't know I was a Catholic until my mother passed, and when I found out, I had went to Father John Yankovic from St. Peter's, and I said, I got to talk to you. And he's like, what's up? And I said, well, just found out that I'm a Catholic. And he goes, oh, and how does that make you feel? I said, guilty. He goes, you're on the right track. And Father John was one of those people. I'm not a religious guy, but Father John was one of those people that he was just always, there was a smile there, and there was a comfort level. There was a peacefulness to him, right? And we're driving by St. Peter's. The protest is going on. I said, screw it. We pull over into the parking lot at St. Peter's. John and I walk around the side of it toward Cornelia. We turn the corner, and all of a sudden, the news groups see us. The cameras are on. Now, here's John and I, hand in hand, walking down Cornelia Street into St. Peter's Church, Catholic church, right? And the cops are looking at us, city police are looking at us with a look of, how dare you? How dare you? And they were ticked. They were not happy because they're trying to control the situation. And how dare we do this? And to this day, I still fight with Desi Rausico about this. And I tell him he was off base and his crew was off base. How dare you ask me to hide myself? How dare you ask me and my husband to hide ourselves? How dare anybody ask us to hide ourselves? And screw you. So John and I walked into St. Peter's. I had no clue what we were walking into. The place is packed. We go walking in, and people stood up and started to clap their hands.
Really? And
it makes me emotional right now. All right.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
And I had tears coming down. And we sat there, and I was like, I have never, until this day, felt so a part of something as I did that day in St. Peter's Church in Plattsburgh.
Wow.
And it was, I'll tell you, I'm getting emotional right now. It was a truly spiritual moment for me. It was something that was a pure sign of love against hate. That people who profess that their God teaches them not to hate but to love was there. It was in that church that day. And it just brought a whole bunch of things into line for me spiritually. I'm not religious, but spiritually for me, it was an awakening moment for me, and the love that was shown at that moment was absolutely incredible. Do you hear that ringing? Do you hear that?
That's your next call.
But do you hear it?
No, okay.
I have the noise reduction on, so I want to make sure that's not bothering.
No, you're perfect. Yeah, good.
So that was a very interesting moment, and they eventually went away, and John and I continued to fight with the police department about where we could or couldn't go, and we had it. I'm an openly gay mayor. I'm not hiding in a closet. Don't ask me to stay away so you don't have to control something. To this day, it still ticks me off, and that was a moment where so much coverage came into that. But I tried to use it as best I could to really be a positive thing for Plattsburgh. But Becky Leonard and the rest of the folks that were involved in the Stop Hate campaign, right? They did such great work. They had those stickers that were going on every business before it happened.
Yeah.
Right?
I just remember the black stop sign.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. The work that they did was incredible, and I stayed away from them because I didn't want it to appear in any way that I was leading that charge, because I wasn't. Mm-hmm. That was the citizens of our city and North Country coming together saying, how are we going to stand up against this when they come here, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, again, that was another turning point for the city. I think another point where everybody had to stop and pause for a minute and think about, what are we? Who are we? What do we really stand for? And what do we believe? And I mean, I just will be forever grateful to the folks, everybody, for the work they did on that campaign, and it still survives today. I still see Stop Hate stickers every now and then in places in Plattsburgh, right?
Yeah,
and
I've seen them. Yeah,
yeah.
Well, Dan, like I said, I appreciate you doing this. I know time wise,
Wait, we didn't get into Travelgate yet. We're not leaving yet. No, we're doing Travelgate. Huh? We're doing Travelgate.
You got more? You can tell me if you like.
Yeah,
story?
Wait a minute. Let me check my calendar here because Belgium can wait. I am doing Travelgate because I got a chip on my shoulder and I'm going to get rid of it today with you.
Good.
All right.
You're in.
Travelgate. All right. So I get tapped. I get tapped to be the chairman of the State Commission of Correction.
Okay.
That position is where you oversee the regulatory operation of the state prison system, the county jails, New York City's Rikers Island, the secure juvenile facilities, and about 560 police department lockups across the state, including NYPD.
Is this out of Albany?
Yeah. So Governor Pataki, I'm with him one day. He talks to me about it. He had certain reasons he wanted to do it, and I said yes, I'll do it. And in June of 2006, that's when I left to take that job.
Okay.
No sooner than I left, and Jack Stewart took over as mayor pro tem, and then came the big race, right? Who's going to be the next mayor? Now, for years and years, there was a certain guy that just wasn't ever going to get the nod to run for mayor. Ron Stafford wasn't going to give it to him, or he probably half the time didn't have the will to do it. But now Clyde Robidoux was out of the way, Dan Stewart was out of the way, so he was going to run for mayor. And part of his campaign was to clean up the city of Plattsburgh, that damn mess that Dan Stewart left. Let's talk about the mess. That city was in better infrastructure shape than it had been in decades. That place had received so much funding for so many things. Had done the best that I could. But 9/11 and the downfall of the real estate markets was, things that were hitting. But 9/11 really killed a lot of things, and the retirement fund for the state of New York is a really weird retirement fund for state and local workers. When they lose money because of economic downturn, the taxpayer makes it up in New York State. So not only do you pay taxes for people that retire in New York State, you pay taxes to make up the difference of losses in the stock market if necessary, because our payment to the state retirement plan went from about $25,000 to over $2 million in 2 years per year.
This is Plattsburgh.
Yeah, Plattsburgh alone.
Wow.
Right? What does that mean? That means that you have to make up that loss, and you have to have that every year thereafter. So I raised taxes. My first tax increase, I think, was 27 or 28%, something like that. They hadn't been raised squat in over 10 years, right? So I raised them. And when they had to be raised again because of that hit by the retirement system, I mean, you can't pluck money out of the air. You can't say, okay, because we dried up our reserves. I used every bit of our reserve money as far as I could go. And then we got down to an structurally imbalanced budget. So it was showing hopeful revenues, not solid revenues. All right. So there was probably about a $400,000 gap, something like that, which, by the way, came in. But anyway, I left. So this guy named Don Kasperzak came in to be mayor. And when he came in, the first thing he did was started to dig in and say, we need an audit of the finances of the city, because somebody had a little hair in the wrong place and said, Dan Stewart abused his travel. All right. So Travelgate took place. So Donnie came out like Donald Trump does, right? With 15 mounds of paper and there's nothing on it. They're blank pages, or the pages of something else that mean nothing, right? I think he's got $14,000 of taxpayer money that he owes. We're going to find out how much he owes. We're going to dig into this. Okay, Donnie, go do your thing, right? And in the end, that monstrosity of accusation and stupidity and childishness and sorry that you didn't get the nod earlier, Donnie, all right? Here's what happens. They come back to me in the end with a $1,400 bill, all right? $700 of it for, I think, Duke University for something that I had attended at Duke as mayor. And they wanted me to pay for the outfit that I had rented from Mirabel up in Montreal to be the wizard, the wizard in the Wizard of Oz, with the youth theater down by the monument because we had theater. At Plattsburgh State, I was in dance things with the students. I was in theater with the youth. I was in theater. I needed an outfit to be the Wizard of Oz. I was part of the Wizard of Oz. I had to learn the lines of Wizard of Oz, and they were crying and bitching about $75 that I spent of taxpayer money on the Wizard of Oz outfit. Well, glory be to you, Donnie. Glory be to you and the other idiots and the spineless fish city councilors who knew when I traveled where I traveled to and knew of it, but they had no guts to stand up to you. They had no guts whatsoever to say, no, Donnie, that's wrong. He actually had our okay to do that. No, spineless fish sat back because they were scared, right? So I want to make this clear. I traveled for the citizens of Plattsburgh. I brought the money home. You got hundreds of thousands to the hundred. And I think people should be thankful for that. You can criticize me for 1,000 things, but that arrogant monstrosity of bull that was pulled in an attempt to have me removed from my state job through the controversy, stick it, Donnie. It never worked for you.
Wow.
It never happened. You didn't get it. You got screwed.
So that was done to try to get you out of the new position also?
Of course it was.
Wow.
Of course. Why would you dig up something about crap like that, which actually was a mound of paper of nothing, all right? If he said I didn't have travel reports, where the hell did that paperwork come from?
Yeah.
No travel reports. Where there are no receipts. I produced the receipts. What is it? Whitney Houston, show me the receipts.
What the funny thing is,
do you think I've been holding resentment? Do you think I've been holding resentment?
That's good. Hey, let it out. This is good. This is so. But Dan, if the other thing you look at, I will look at something like that. You see it in national politics too. It's like how much time, effort, resource, and was given to that. Which at the end of the day, even if it was a legitimate $1,400, you spent all that time, effort, and energy for $1,400. If that.
Yeah.
Like I look at that from a business perspective in my mind. I'm like, that's something you don't even worry about.
I had to get a lawyer.
Yeah, not even counting that. It's just wasted time. It's energy.
And then they had to sign a paper saying, all right, we accept the 1,400. Dancer will never be touched again for this. He's free and clear, blah, 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 right? And $1,400 and how many hours of city employees, attorney, the fees, you paid 20 grand to do a $1,400 screw job, all right? And what did you get for it? Did you get your glory? Did you get your good feeling? Did it give you a little tingle there? You know, are you happy about it, Donnie? Because you know what? It's shameful. It's absolutely shameful.
That's wild.
And I'm no longer in politics. I can say it now. I don't have to answer to anybody. So there, it's off my chest. I won't think about it anymore. Well, I'll still think about it because I still hate it. But the reality is, you know what? At least I had Gary Douglas walk into me and say, stop. Stop complaining about Clyde. Don't blame things on Clyde. It's yours now. Take the ship. All right? No one had the guts to go into Donnie and say, Donnie, you finally made it, man. You finally made it. You made it. You've always wanted to be senator, you know, but at least you're mayor. Accept it. Move on. No, let's go after Dan Stewart.
That's wild. How long did that whole process take?
Months.
2 months, I'm assuming.
Months. They spent more than 20 grand. I don't know. Check it out. I mean, why do an audit of an audit? You know.
But just unnecessary money spent.
That's the sad part of politics. Is it becomes so damn petty, right? It becomes so damn petty and so damn personal, and that's the problem with our country right now. You know, if you look at our country today, what a friggin' mess, right? And why is that? Because everybody's about self. Everybody's about self, and it's tragic. And that's both sides of the aisle. I have no super respect for Democrats or Republicans. Like I care less what party they're in. I just care what they're about. All right.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. I think people are losing faith in the political system. It's just like you're getting these people elected, they go down, they're going to give you this rah-rah speech as they got elected. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, wait, someone's paying me to get this cushy lifestyle for untermed
Yeah.
limit that of time that, I don't know. It's just, I've kind of gotten turned off from it. The local stuff I still like because it's local and I know like the people. And like I said, if you're, whether it's the mayor or, Mike Cashman, or if it's Billy or whatever, whoever's, in the position, it's like, what do they stand for? What is like,
That's right.
do I think that they're leading the charge in the correct way or going with the right intent? They are great. That's the person I trust. I'm putting them in there. I'm not going to question them. Just let them do their thing. But I find, like you said, there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks and a lot of
Yeah.
pundits and everybody talking and stuff. And it's like, at the end of the day, they're from the outside looking in. So it's
okay
like I
if
said,
they're going off the tracks. If they're going off the tracks and you need to have change, you have change, right? And that's
yeah,
that's what's supposed to happen. But unfortunately, sometimes in politics and in communities, people can't get out of their own way, and they can't get out of the whatever that deep-seated thing was and reason was to go after me or for anybody to go after anybody. That's unfortunate. It doesn't have to happen that way, right? It just
yeah,
doesn't have to happen that way. I had to do some things as mayor on personnel issues that I really didn't want to do, but I was legally advised I had to do them. But you know
mhm,
what? There are other things that you don't do, and unfortunately, yeah, that's what happens. I'll tell you, it's. I was talking to John last night. I told him I was going to be on a podcast with you. He goes, "Oh boy," and I said, "What?" He goes, "You're probably going to say it. You're finally going to say it." I said, "Yeah, I'm probably going to say it." And again, he's my barometer, right?
I love it.
And, I had, I mean, look, even after I left and went to the state job, I was still working politics for Plattsburgh and Albany. When they weren't sure they were going to get the funding for the park where PAP stuff was at and everything to finalize that, I went into the governor's office and talked to him and said, "Look, this is what you and I started together with the rail yard move. They need this funding, right? I got funding through the Department of Transportation at the state for stuff up in Plattsburgh while I was the chairman of corrections." Because I still believed in what Plattsburgh was doing, regardless of its leadership.
Mhm.
Regardless of its leadership, all right, I would still, when I could, make a move for Plattsburgh because I owe that city so much. I owe the people of that city my livelihood. In all reality, I have what I have today because they gave me a shot. The guy least expected to get the shot got the shot, and they gave that to me, and I'll be forever grateful for that. I just find it unfortunate that there will always be people within communities such as Plattsburgh, and I live here in Orlando. It happens here as well. There will always be those people that are out there trying to do it for the right reason, and there'll be people out there trying to do it for the payback wrong reason. And
Yeah.
it's extremely unfortunate that that exists, but that's the reality. But I haven't had a conversation like this in years, dude. I left in 2006. It's 15 years ago, right?
This is great. Yeah.
15 years ago, and I haven't had a conversation like every now and then. Joe Templio calls me up. Hey, do you remember? And I'm like, yes. Well, what did you say, Joe? It's 12 years ago. How the hell do I remember what I said? Come on. I'm like almost
Yeah.
60 years old. It's like, and but he'll still call me up for something every now and then. And I remember after I left too that Ducky Drake went wild on me and wiry, right? Suddenly Ducky took like this left turn that right turn or 360 spin. I don't know what the hell was going on with it, but it's just people change and they go in these
Yeah.
directions, and it's unfortunate, especially when you're the recipient. When you're the recipient being hammered and you don't have a chance to defend yourself because you're in a state job and you can't go out there and just
Yeah.
call people what you want to call them and say the things you want to say because you can't, right? You can't have the podium anymore.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
power of the podium and the stack of papers that was a bunch of crap, right? Come on, Donnie, little
I would love.
trumper.
I would love to see the clip of just walking in with all the paperwork.
Oh my God, it was ridiculous. There's a picture of it in the Press Republic. Go to the archives of the Press Republic. There's a stack of papers. I'm looking at it like, what the hell's that? If there are no receipts, if there are no travel, what is that? It was a prop. It's a prop.
I'm gonna look that up. I think that'd be funny to see. If I find it, I'll send it to you.
All right.
Feel like a voodoo doll. You can just start like
Yeah.
throwing stuff at it.
All right. I got to go to Belgium now.
All right, Dan. I appreciate this. This was great. Like I said, there was some good stories here. I think some of the stuff I was like, how do you get like usually sometimes it's like boring. Like I got into politics because of this, or I took a political science class. You're like, no, I had the condom costume. Like this was the start. Like so, it was good. Dan, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for coming on. This was good. I'm glad. Hopefully, you got some stuff out, and this is like I said, it was a good history lesson for me.
It's kind of funny. I can laugh about it now. It's like I was just putting on a nice show there, and it's like the old politician, but. Yeah, it felt good to talk to you. I appreciate it, and keep up the good work up there. And what are you, 30, 32?
31. Be 32 in a couple months, yeah.
All right, so you're right at the age, right? So it's time to make decisions about your community, right? What part are you going to play in it? How far do you want to go? I would say this: skip the whole council thing. Just run for town supervisor or for mayor. All right, skip the lower level. All right, because when you're there, you're just kind of like a sideshow.
Right? Step right in.
Yeah, step right up to the top. Don't mess around with going up the ladder.
I can't be mayor, but I live right next to Mike Cashman, so I'll tell Mike.
I like Mike. Tell Mike
Mike's a good guy. I always tell people I can hit a golf ball at his house, so he's a good guy. Yeah.
Well, tell him he's not in there for life, and
he's mentioned that. He said he's going to put his term limit on himself, so I appreciate that.
And I believe he will. He's an ethical guy. He's an ethical.
Oh, Mike's. Yeah, we're lucky to have Mike. He's good for sure. But
you are.
Well, Dan.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. I thought I lost you. I'll let you go to Belgium. I'll end it here. I'll send you. You'll have to send me the clip because it's the first time that someone else did the recording, which is great.
I'll send it over. Yeah, give me
delegating over to you.
I'll send it over.
Beautiful, Dan. Thank you so much. Good luck with Belgium.
Thanks, buddy.
That's it, folks. Episode 163 with Dan Stewart.
Thanks for listening to the Galen Trombley Show. If you want to reach me, you can go on Facebook at Galen Trombley, on Instagram at Galen Trombley, and on YouTube at Galen Trombley. The spelling, GAELANTROMBLEY.